One of them, I think, is a nice thing to remind yourself that life's a garden, not a building. Because quite often you think you're finished and then you go, well, that's all done. And you're like, no, it'll keep growing and keep working. Sometimes you need to prune it. Sometimes you need to rework it. It's going to change whether you like it or not. And as a performer, I think it's good for your ego because performers have a nice way of going, don't you remember that I did this? And then you go, yeah, but time will pass and no one will give a shit what you used to do. So it's a garden. It's not a building. It's not stagnant.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Today's guest is one of the most recognised comedians and entertainers in the Australian industry. He has a really great outlook on life and is a bit of a philosopher. I learnt a lot from him and I've been applying his knowledge and tools in my daily life. This was such a fun two-sided chat. Dave is unbelievably funny. I spend more time laughing than speaking. You can tell he's a real radio pro with the ease of conversation. I really have missed doing in-person podcasts. They are such a treat, and I'm so glad Dave could be here with me in my studio. We even played a bit of basketball after, which was pretty cute. He's a lot better than me, which should surprise no one. So let's officially introduce the guest of the day, Dave Thornton. Dave can pretty much do it all. He's a comedian, writer, actor, television and radio presenter. In my humble opinion, he's one of the most accomplished, well-rounded talents in Australia, but more importantly, he's a great guy. If you're in Australia, you might recognise him from the telly, where he's been in Spicks and Specks, The Project, Hughesy We Have a Problem, Just for Laughs, House Husbands, Upper Middle Bogan, and has also co-hosted 20 to 1 and hosted The Beep Test, and is also a regular performer at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. We cover a lot in this chat. There's great banter for the first 10 to 15 minutes, and then we get straight into it, but the banter flows throughout. We chat about fame, bombing live, feeling our emotions, the brain, 10-day silent retreats, negative self-talk, introversion versus extroversion, the media, taking action and the perception behind it, people-pleasing, and looking after yourself, both body and mind. Before we get into this epic chat, if you'd like to keep up to date with the latest info regarding the podcast, follow Funny in Failure on Instagram and Facebook. I often post short clips and other cool stuff to keep you in the loop for upcoming and previous episodes. Also, if you'd like to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram and Twitter under Michael_Kahan. That's Kahan with a K. And lastly, the podcast comes out every week, 5 p.m. Mondays, Australian Eastern Standard Time. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other terrific episodes. I hope you enjoy. Where would be a good way to start? We spoke about a few things.
Now you're used to Zoom. Like, how's your internet connection? Oh, no, wait. What?
Oh, do you know how...
Are you wearing pants? Oh, what?
Actually, never do. So, the thing with Zoom is, obviously with that little, that lag, it's really bad. But then the worst is trying to say your internet connection sucks, but without actually saying your internet connection sucks.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's their like computer, they can't move. I'm like, oh, the internet's not great. Mine seems to be on 3 bars, and I'm like passive aggressive. And then it's like for the first 10 minutes, it's horrible. You're like, fuck, what are we going to do? And for some reason, the universe always provides, and it's great.
I mean, there's the world we live in because people who are digital natives and grown up their whole lives with it are all over it.
Yep.
So the hierarchy of age in this day and age doesn't work anymore. I'm 41, and so you have those moments of 22-year-olds who are all over it. You're doing some Zoom, there's 5 of you on it, and everyone's all over it. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm in the front room that is my 2-year-old's bedroom, and I'm trying, guys. Do I tether? Do I tether through my phone? What do I do?
Have you seen that video clip of this guy? How I think he's like on Sky News, I want to like talking about finance or something. Then his kid walks in and he loses his shit. He's like, get the fuck out of my room. What are you doing? Get out, screaming and abusing. I think it's like live on air or however it works. He goes, sorry about that. And he just continues talking about like the market forecast.
I know. That's when his wife, isn't it? She drags the child out.
So you've had none of that. You haven't had like kids walk in or any ridiculous things.
I mean, I can talk about this now when we had a bubble, well, a self-confessed bubble with our street during lockdown here in Melbourne. And so the kids would play together because we're just keeping their sanity. My kids are preschool, so they're just running around with them. But then I remember I did a podcast and the kids were all around at our house, and then the door flings open and 6 kids run in. And they were like, what are you doing? I've adopted some during this lockdown. Why not? And I had to talk my way out of not breaking the curfew.
Oh, true.
Yeah, that's what it was like. Because sanity prevails. I understand why rules are in, but sometimes I'm going to be close to someone.
We are on exactly the same page.
And it's weird because I get it. If people are worried about it, I'm like, cool, that's your bag. I've got no problem with it. And then it's very strange, like at the start of the comedy festival, because masks were a necessity here in Melbourne, but that was only the first night of the comedy festival. So everyone had a mask on. And then the next night, that's when the masks proviso was dropped.
Oh, imagine doing stand-up with the mask. Side point.
I know. It was weird. And so we had DHHS officers walking around the comedy festival, checking that everyone's socially distanced. They're all doing all this. While 57,000 people were going into the MCG, going through the turnstiles, touching everything on the way, screaming into each other's.
Yeah, exactly. Like licking and like the poles. I was at an Essendon game for most of my audience is actually around the world, surprisingly not Australia. So our rules are very different to you guys, and we're in a very different situation. So I'm just going to say that. But I was at the footy, and when you're like screaming and spitting, it was so funny. I actually had a dream because now I'm fine with hugging and whatever, handshakes, blah, 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 blah. I had a dream, I think 2 days ago, of me sticking my hand out to like greet someone and they didn't budge. I'm like, oh, maybe they didn't see it. And so then I did it again very forcefully, and they put their hands in the pocket, and the guy said, are you fucked, mate? And I'm like, and then I woke up. That was my dream. This is what COVID has done to us. We've ruined the social connection. I don't know about you, but has it been a challenge for you, COVID? Like how to interact with people, how to speak to people, the whole kabam.
Of course. Because now people are doing knuckles as well, reaching across.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
And you're weird because you're in a professional environment, giving someone a pound who's 65, who's the CEO of a fairly major business. I'm there to do a corporate gig, and I'm like, oh, pound me. And so you don't know what the rules are anymore. But I think just bringing it up and saying, I don't know what the rules are.
Yeah.
I mean,
no one knows, so. Well,
might be there might be fans of your podcast who are also fans of Judge Dredd. But in that movie, no one high-fived, because I remember that was supposedly in the future where we just didn't like human interaction.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Oh, mate, they just knew too much.
They knew what was going on.
Yeah.
We're also talking about like fist pumps. We play basketball. You're in a much higher league. I'm in the lowest league, so you're always behind me like an absolute creep. So I always walk past you. Yeah, and you are a freak. I've seen you dunk over people.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
No, to be honest, we are, and I know this for certain, at a level where I remember we went up a division and guys started dunking on us, and I said to our teammates, this is not going to happen anymore. Let's go down. It's nothing worse than turning back on a fast break. You're trying to defend it and some guys dunk it on your head and you're like, this is really demoralizing.
The worst. When I was 17 and I was playing in like the only Jewish team that there was at that stage. And I think the stereotypes are correct. We're not very good. Sport's not our thing. So I was one of the tallest. And how tall are you?
I'm about 6'2" in the old measure.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit smaller than you. And where do you rank in your team in terms of height?
I don't think I'm the tallest, but we have across the board, everyone's about our height.
Oh, no, I'm like the tallest.
Without a doubt.
In the teams that I'm playing now,
yeah,
I'm the tallest. And it's embarrassing because I want to play as a point guard because I'm the height of a point guard, not of a center. But anyway, when we were playing under 18s, one of my mates who is smaller than me got dunked on, and they were all we were playing a Sudanese team, and it was like basketball. They were losing it and high-fiving each other and going berserk, and my friend was so ashamed he didn't play next week. Absolutely destroyed. I didn't know you could do that in our league. Yeah, and man. We're now in the lowest league. We don't allow that to happen.
Look, I'm not here to judge when you say, like, in your team, you're probably the tallest.
Yeah, we're not good.
I remember reading about Amari Stoudemire. Used to play for Phoenix Suns, who you go for.
Yep, my favourite team, the Israeli champion, I believe, or... Yeah, was he Israeli champion?
Yeah, because I found out, and I don't know if he converted or he's always been Jewish.
Yeah,
but
he doesn't fit the mold. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, but I think
what are you saying?
The national team was like, yes, you can absolutely. What do you want to do? You can have every position on the court.
It's like when we're trying to get Ben Simmons. We would have let Ben Simmons do whatever the fuck as long as he was playing for us. But Amari Stoudemire, this 7-foot massive monster, used to be one of the best players in the league.
Yeah.
Does he actually play for their National League? He doesn't regard himself as American?
I don't know.
But that would have been.
It made me laugh when they said he was embraced into these Jewish teams. And
We're recruiting, guys. We need more Amari Stoudemire.
I'm like, in sport, you welcome anyone into your religion. You can be any religion and just
as long
be
as
like,
you're good.
You could, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, national identities are quite often built. I mean, Australia, in somewhat can be somewhat xenophobic, but if you can play sport,
you're killing
welcome.
it. Yeah, welcome to our club. It's actually very interesting because you're sporty and you're a comedian. And from what I've noticed in my comedy and creative circles, sports, like, you're a bit of an outsider.
Yeah, but I always say it's like when I hang out with sports people, I'm definitely the Omega man. Like I'm the lowest ranking officer. Do you know, if we were in jail, I'm on the bottom bunk.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Things are happening and I just can't. I can't get
out
out
of your
it.
control.
Yeah. But then in the arts sphere,
cool
I'm seen as very sporty and possibly alpha. You know, it's like, wow, he can play sports. Like, yeah, but in the greatest scheme of things, no.
What do you mean by that?
It's all relative. Like, I used to study graphic design, and I remembered I was the sporty one in my graphic design course because, again, you've got kids who've stayed inside and not seen a lot of sunlight. They've probably got rickets.
Like me.
Yeah, and enjoy drawing their feelings. And then they're like, oh, look at this jock. And you're like, no. In my basketball team, I'm that guy. I'm the guy that talks about my feelings.
Oh, so is that hard going from two what sounds like very different circles? Because it's similar to me. In my sports team compared to the creative side.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a different person seen completely differently.
Yeah. But I mean, you are the same person. It's just that, where you rank almost in the social scheme of things is where you sit. But I quite enjoy that.
Oh, why is that? Is that because you can like take a break or you get to explore another side of yourself?
Yeah. And it's just fun because you get to hang out with different people. I through a friend, got to know Brett Wheeler, who used to play in the National Basketball League here in Australia and was a very good player. And it was funny when I met him because he also is a bit of a graphic designer. He's now a photographer. Really interesting guy. But I wanted to talk basketball and he just wanted to talk comedy. And he's a lovely guy. Weirdly a lefty just like me. So I don't know what that speaks of in those creative
That is bizarre.
terms. But he is 6'9" and still fairly built. I haven't seen Wheels in a while. But
6'9".
You know, and so it was quite funny because it was... Both of us didn't want to talk about anything that we'd done.
Well, also, just as a side point, 6'9" is enormous. But if you want to play in the NBA, he's not that tall. He's pretty small. And that's like horrifying to me. I was like, if I was 6'9", I'd be in the NBA. I'm like, mate, you would be lucky to play in the reserves of the NBL. I've always had this. I'm a horrible player. But I always thought if I'm 7 foot, I can like do something. I could get minutes. But I think after the last few years and seeing how I play, I can barely get up the court and I'm in my late 20s, I don't think that's a possibility anymore.
And I think when you're younger, I just wanted to be tall so I could play basketball.
And then small otherwise?
But then you realise how inconvenient that would be in your life. Having now known basketball players and having mates, one of my mates who I grew up with is 6'11".
Oh, jeez.
And he played at a level, like he played NBL for a little bit, but then he's just a very tall guy on the work site who finds it incredibly annoying that people are constantly asking him about his height.
Oh, it would be so annoying, even with me. I'm not tall, but I'm tall for the Jews. And so people would be like, oh, you're really tall. And I always wanted to say, yeah, I'm glad you're laughing. I always wanted to say, fuck you. I'm not tall. I'm just tall compared to everyone that's really small. So this guy gets it times 1,000. And that would drive me nuts. Like, you're really tall. Did you play basketball? I'm like, yes, I did. And that would be the conversation. It's like, I'm sure as a stand-up comedian, you probably used to get, and maybe now people are like, oh, you're a stand-up. Tell me a joke. And
sure.
Yeah. And I hated that. Do you still get that? How do you deal with something like that?
I'm quite enjoying now because I've done it for so long that sometimes when it comes out of the gates really quickly, I'll just go, I'm a stand-up comedian, and watch people just stop in their tracks and go, oh. And some people move through it because they don't know how to deal with it.
It's like a taboo subject or something?
It's like that.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, exactly. They don't know how to deal with it. They just don't know, okay, what am I talking about? What touchstones because invariably someone's like, hey, you've been working, how's the work week been? You've been stressed. And if you're in an Uber, you're waiting for all those touchstones to turn up and be like, yeah, been a full-on week, but, weather's been good. Now we got a long weekend ahead of us. I do stand-up comedy. Oh God, I don't know what to ask. I don't know what to ask. And also, if you've got some 22-year-old who's in a clothes store and they always ask you the same questions, because I don't have normal hours, I'll turn up on a Tuesday in the middle of the day and they're like, busy day today? And I go, yeah, kind of. I'm working tonight. Oh, you're working night shift? Yeah. Yeah. And then what do you do? And I say, stand-up comedian. And you watch them say, I don't know how to start. And then they'll go, should I know you? And I say, I don't know.
Well, you don't know me.
Yeah, so they don't know me, so just let it pass through.
Do you ever get people go, I know you from somewhere? Where do I know you from?
Yeah, all the time.
Oh.
Like I say, my fame is at a point where people think I shop at their Coles. You know, like I'm not stop dead in your tracks. I need a photo fame. I'm in a, no. You know my cousin. I swear to God, I saw you at a barbecue. I'm at that level of fame.
Oh, that's a nice level.
Agony did this last week. The Melbourne Comedy Festival, as we're recording this, is on right now. And so we're a little bit more famous than we usually are because people go to the comedy festival in Melbourne, do all that thing, and then for the other 11 months, we just peter off into the shadows. And this guy, I was waiting to go to a restaurant, and this guy turned and goes, how do I know you? And I said, I don't know, man. How do you know me? And he goes, comedy festival. Are you Arj Barker? And I went, no, I'm not.
That isn't, you don't even look.
I joked. Whoopi Goldberg would have been closer.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
We've had so many guests say like, oh, you that person, and they don't look anything alike. I just released this podcast, so we're probably like a few weeks ahead in podcast time world. And Gary Anthony Williams, he was a 300-pound massive unit, his words. And I don't know, maybe you've seen him in Whose Line Is It Anyway? Malcolm in the Middle has been in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And he had this, I don't know if it was a role model, but she was a casting person and she gave him like a role. Well, he needed to apply for the role. And it was teenage white Southern girl. This is a 300-pound black man. And he got the role.
He did.
He got the role. And I've been thinking about, I've actually been obsessing over it. I asked him like detail, like step by step, how does this happen? Do they change the role? He goes, I don't know. I just did the role. And he didn't even, like he obviously saw the humor in it, but he's just like, yeah, this is just what I do. And it just blew my mind.
He's got range.
Yeah.
Incredible range.
Can you imagine 300? I'm not here to fat shame anyone, but 300 pounds is a lot, especially for a teenage white Southern girl.
Yeah.
And he's also black. And so that's what it said on the thing. I just wish I was in the room when there was just like 10 minutes of silence and they're trying to process whether this was a joke or not.
Yeah. And I get it as a performer. You always go, sure, okay, we're going to do this, are we? If you want me to.
Have you had many?
It's hard for him to do the research as well. Is he going to go down south? Why are you following my daughter around? I've got a role.
For research.
I've got a role.
But it's also interesting, like from the stand-up side, and I've heard this from various people on the podcast and just speaking to people.
Yeah.
The bombs. And we've spoken about this a lot on the podcast. And that terrifies me. You can be killing it like 8 out of 10 gigs. I don't know what your ratio is. And then for whatever reason, cricket, nothing. How do you deal with that? I know you've been asked this question 100 times, but it's amazing that you can like be the comedian, one of the most well-known comedians in Australia, but you've still been dealt with like they're like knife wounds along the way. How do you push through that?
I just sit in a bath, I plug a toaster in, sit it next to me and say, is this really how we're going to end it all?
What brand?
Man, yeah. That's a good way to get a sponsor.
Breville?
Yeah, Sunbeam.
Yeah.
I only had one recently that threw me off. It was the worst gig I'd had in 10 years.
Oh, wow.
In Australia, since you have a lot of international listeners, I'll explain it to you in Australia, where we probably have a turnover of a new show much more than other countries. We have a festival circuit, and a lot of us went in during normal times, during precedented times, not unprecedented times, what we're in right now. We will then maybe go to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, might go to the Montreal Festival, you do international festivals and whatnot. But we turn over an hour of material every year. Now, I know with Americans, they quite often say, yeah, but how tight's that material? Yeah, well, that's for you to judge or whatever. But that's the way that we invariably play it.
Yeah, I like it. I like the Australian model.
Yeah, so then we have to do trial shows. And then we are really going in there to see if that joke flies or it doesn't. And we have to be brutal about it. And because of the year that we've just been through, our run-up to this Melbourne Comedy Festival wasn't like it normally was. We had to do it a lot quicker. We had to turn it over a lot faster.
How long did you have? You wouldn't have had long to perform before you did this show.
I mean, usually the cycle is September, October, you're having conversations. You're going to tour next year. Yep. What are you going to call it? I don't know. I made up a word. Here you go. we'll call this muttering in the night, and then I'll figure out what that means. And then we do other festivals leading up to it. There's other ones on around. Brisbane does a comedy festival before the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. Adelaide has a fringe festival. You do a lot of those. You work in the rooms, working up your material. Yep. Thanks for coming. So usually by December, I'm staring at half a show thinking, yep, it's got some weight. I can still turn over. I've got a couple more months under my belt. This year it was January, and your producer says, you're going to do this? And I was like, I think I got some stuff. And she's like, well, we need to know now. So do you or don't you? And you're like, yeah. And then it was full throttle. Let's go. And we missed doing live because of all the lockdowns. So we just wanted to go. And then I did a trial show. And again, here in Melbourne, we copped the worst of it in Australia, not compared to the rest of the world, not that bad, but in Australia we did cop it. And so it was mandatory for us to wear masks in this state. And I remembered I walked out doing this trial show, and I wasn't told that people were wearing masks because by then a lot of the restrictions had been lifted. Yep. I just walked out. There was about 20 odd people. They're all wearing masks. I felt like I was at a hate rally. I'm like, why is everyone hiding their identity? What have we done? And the techie goes, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, people got to wear masks. And I said, for the hour? And he goes, yeah, for the hour. I went, okay. I start talking to people. They weren't really talking back. I was like, what is happening
that's the
here?
worst. Yeah, of course.
And then I said, okay, well, let's just do what we need to do. Yeah, I start doing some jokes. Every one of my jokes starts falling flat. Now, the thing about a trial show is invariably you've got material you've used before that you've worked out before, but there might be, 10, 15 minutes in the hour that you're not sure about. You're not sure you're not sure how they're going to sit in the show. You're not sure the running list, whether these things should go at the start, the end, whatever. Still working it all out. Everything's dying. And I stopped and I said, have you guys heard all these jokes before? And everyone in the audience is like, yeah, I saw you perform last week. Yeah, I saw you at this thing the other day. Oh. Yeah, I've seen you. And I was like, well, I'm trying out these gags to see how they all fit together. So you've seen all these gags? And like, yeah, predominantly, yeah. And I was like, so what are we doing here? And they're like, I don't know. We just got told we should turn up to this thing, and we liked you the other week, so we're going to do this. And I said, but they're all the same jokes.
Oh, that's bizarre.
I don't know. And so I did a couple, and I said, this is the most useless exercise I've ever been a part of. And my techie's going, I don't know, man. And he's sweating bullets because he felt like he tanked me.
Oh, did he organise the crowd? Or
my producers organised the crowd, and they even say, they go, we don't know where we get these people from because it's quite hard to get people. Can you come along to a free gig where a comedian's trying out jokes?
Okay, get me on board. I'll do that. I'll put my hand up and I'll rally the troops.
But it's always hard because you need people who are laughers, because quite often people who turn up to it are fans of comedy. So they sit there going, yeah, it was good.
That was a good bit.
That was a good bit. I'm not going to laugh. And you're like, no, I need laughter.
I will laugh ridiculously loud even when you go, hi, my name's Dave. Like, fuck, that's a good bit. Yeah.
He's done it again.
Yeah, love it.
And so I died a horrific death. They record it on audio because you can listen back to it. I never have. It got to the point where
brave call.
I went out, I finished it short and just went, cool, thanks guys. Just get home safe. Bye. And went back and thought, what was that? And I even said, we're only weeks out until I've got to do this live performance to paid audiences. You've shaken me more than I've been shaken in many, many years. I wanted to be let out the back door. I didn't want to bump into anyone from that gig. I called my partner. I haven't done this in years. Where I called her straight away and I said, I need to talk to you now. I can't wait until I drive home because I'm that shook. Because also we've come out of a lockdown. Melbourne had 4 months of lockdown.
I fully get it.
Our confidence was shaken. Socially, we were all a little off.
Yep.
Everything was your footing was all misstepped.
It's like bizarro world. Like you're just like, what's going on? You're just like a bit of a shell of yourself, especially when it's one of the first ones as well.
Yeah. And my car was parked really close to the gig, but I intentionally walked around the block so I wouldn't bump into anyone from the show.
Yep.
Talking to my partner, where I knew there was no rational thoughts. She's going, well, what do you think we could do right now? And I'm like, cancel the entire thing and I'll try and find another job. And so then I was driving home, still talking to her, still going around in circles about how bad it was. Like she, even after 20 minutes, said, I don't know how else you can describe how bad this gig was. And it was almost a challenge. I went, oh, no, there was more.
Get a pen and paper, we're going to write this shit down.
And then got home, had to hang up from her because I said I'm out the front, and then walk inside and continue on with my rant.
Well, it's so interesting. This story just jumped just sprung to mind. One of my first guests, Elliot Loney, and he is very, I don't know if you've met him before, but he's very good.
Impersonator.
Yeah, very good. And he got what he thought was his big break, and it was like Julia Gillard had just come. That was our Prime Minister a while ago. But there was a few thousand people, and he was there to like bag all the Liberal politicians. And he got up there and he was doing all of his best stuff, nothing, crickets. Then he did Tony Abbott, and he said that always kills, especially in that crowd. You'd think he would kill it, absolutely nothing. And he said that he went through the back. He didn't want to see anyone. He went into his car and he just cried. And he said it's never happened to him before. And it was like the lowest point in his life. And he thought he was done as a comedian. But what I find like so amazing about stand-ups is that that's the worst thing a guy can basically experience. I know there's other stuff, but it's to experience just silence and crickets. And there's a part of you're being very vulnerable. You're showing a side to you. Also, he had very high expectations, but he bounced back and he's like, I'm going to make some changes. And he did whatever he did. And now looks like he's killing it. And I've always found that pretty awesome that you can bounce back from something like that, because fear stops us from going to the next level often. But you've experienced this a lot in your career, and it has nothing to do with you as a stand-up. Even the best, and you are, the best stand-up comedians, they die a lot. Not all the time, but they die, and they still keep on getting up and still doing it. I think that's amazing.
I mean, it's stupid now that you're breaking it down. It seems idiotic, if I've got to be honest.
But you still do it. I don't know anyone where they experience, it's like almost like an attack on your soul. But you get up, you do it.
I mean, when you put it like that, it's like someone walking out to sea, just constantly being hit by a wave and getting dragged back to shore. It's like, maybe just stay back at shore, mate. But, I mean, to work in new material, you have to die. That's what I quite like about stand-up comedy, because anyone's ego, if it's getting too big and as a stand-up comedian thinks, I'm doing amazing. You're like, oh, really? Well, now you got to write some new material. And
scary,
daunting. And stuff is going to die. It's just going to die. Because, I mean, your strike rate, your hope gets better as you get more experience, but then you're just going to have to take that. And, it's an ego check. I've been on lineups, because a lot of comedian shows are lineups where you've got a host and then you've got a handful of acts on. And when you're getting up and you're trying material, but yet everyone else on the bill isn't.
True.
And you're getting up, you're going to die. Like, you're going to take it in the teeth because you have to find out if these jokes have got anything in it. And you can feel sometimes the comedians are like, oh, how'd that work out for you? And then the crowd might even go, oh, yeah, I know that guy. I know that guy from the telly. And then you've just been hit. And they walk away going, well, everyone was great except for that guy that I knew from the telly. And you go, yeah, good. But that's just the process, and you've just got to go through it.
And because you've been doing this for a while, does it still sting as much now? Or is it a different relationship?
I mean, that night that I did that trial show, simply because it was weeks out from starting a real ticketed live event, I hadn't felt pressure like that in a long time, because I don't mind dying, but I'm months out. So that's the process. But now it's like, I don't have time on my hands. And time is when the friction is at its worst.
Yep.
It's like in the original Star Wars when they're in that compactor and the walls are closing in. They can't just be like, oh, can I have another 2 hours to figure out how this thing works? It's time.
I'm tired. Can I have a nap?
Yeah, exactly. Do you know who I am? In the next 2 movies, I'm going to be really important. So can I just get a bit of a breather here? But for me, I knew, luckily, and this is thanks to my partner, because she does a lot of work in this, is that I knew it was all emotional chat in my head, and I needed to download, I should say, all that emotional chat. And she was saying, what do you want right now? And I said, what I need is to upend all this, and then tomorrow I'll figure out what happened. And she's like, oh, okay. And then so I just, and she was really good too, because she said, well, just watch some TV. I'll go to bed. I'll have the kids in the morning. You sleep it off.
That's so cool.
And it was true. But I was proud of myself, at least, that I was thinking, because she said, what decisions need to get made? And I said, I cannot make a decision right now. My emotive brain has gone ballistic. It's, 2,000 years ago, I would have run out of the cave, looked at the saber-toothed tiger and go, oh, I've got you! And then I would have been lacerated. So at least I thought I stay in the cave, rant, get everything you need out, and then the next day, and true to form, I woke up and went, okay, there were some other factors in that, other factors that were involved, things that were out of my hands. Yes, there's some stuff that needs to get worked on, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're okay. And we were okay.
I imagine that would also...
I say we, like me and the jokes of these partners.
Well, it depends how you want to see it. But it's also, Oh, we can go in so many different directions. One, I would imagine with experience that you can probably deal with that stuff better. Or also there's like various different like theories on these or different experiences. At the start, you're young and you're dumb, so you don't realize probably at the very start how bad it probably was. So you can maybe deal with it better. But then when you hit like a relative level of fame, then it's hard. But I would still imagine overall comes with experience, your support systems, and that you can cope a lot better.
Yeah, and it's difficult. What we do is difficult. So you have to accept that. You have to say, well, what you're trying to pull off isn't going to be easy.
Yep.
So expecting it to be easy is just, that's a fool's game. You're not going to say, oh, this time I figured out. There's no cheating around it. There's no way to get around it. That is the process. And this year especially, because my rhythms are all out and because the run-up to the Melbourne International Comedy Festival was different, I had to accept it. You can't
That's tough. Letting go can be...
Totally. And you realise in everyone's life, well, especially in my own, I rest upon the infrastructure that's been built around me, as in the habits and the patterns and oh yeah, this always happens around this time. This always happens at that time, but we always get through it. That was all thrown out. So all of my rhythm and my infrastructure was gone. But I thought, but you don't have an option. You've said, yes, you're going to do this. This is the lay of the land right now. You accept it, or you grab that toaster and throw it into the bath.
The Breville, what was your brand? we should be sponsored. I don't even know what Breville does. I don't know why I'm stuck on that word.
Because I don't know if Sunbeam still exists. Yeah. That's very 80s Australia, Sunbeam.
Oh, well, either way, I'd love some sponsorship money. I always used to ask this question about, well, what I've been starting the podcast with is who are like your mentors and role models and life advice that's changed you. But at the very start of the podcast, I always used to ask, who are the 5 people you spend the most time with and what have they done for you? And I think a good way to start would be your partner, because we were speaking off air a little bit, and she sounds like an emotive genius. And I'll give some context to that. I studied kinesiology, and that's all about like mind, the physical body, the emotions, all of that stuff, and how our emotions pretty much override our entire existence. And so I was listening to how you were speaking about it. I'm like, this lady knows what she's doing. And I'd want to know like how she's helped you when you go through negative moments of reframing your emotions, because that's the game changer in my mind, is understanding, recognizing, and how to deal with the emotions.
Yeah, mate. Like I'm a creative person. I think I've always been creative. Even any job I ever thought I would ever have, it's somehow creative. I've never done that thing of going, even my fallbacks were creative.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah, it was never, well, if this construction job doesn't work out, that's me done. Like I used to be a graphic designer. I used to draw a lot as a kid. I'd kind of be in my own world creating whatever. And I'm lucky that I had parents that were like, yeah, go do that. And my father called me never sweat because I hated any physical work. He's like, never sweat.
Very Jewish like me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We don't do manual labor. That's not our thing.
I'm tall. Maybe I need to convert. I feel like I could dominate this religion.
You can play in our team. we need some height.
Star of David. You've already got me.
I'm being 100% serious. We do need a centre. So if you ever want to fill in and it's not a late game, you're more than welcome.
You know what? This is a side note. I was only talking to my mum, who I was raised Catholic, but I said to mum over Easter, I said, like, tongue in cheek, you going to church? And she's like, what do you reckon? Like, she doesn't do any of it anymore.
No, we've never been religious.
And I was always like, you know what? On logos alone, I don't know why we stuck with Christianity. It's the worst logo. It's the worst reminder you can have. I was like,
you need good branding.
Yeah, you've got a star. That makes sense. Crescent moon looks awesome.
Yeah. Look, not bad. I like that.
I don't want to make a religious war. I'm just saying it's a bad logo. From a graphic design point of view.
Branding's essential. Maybe get more people. Who knows?
Just saying.
Yep.
But where were we? We were talking about, yes. So I have a creative brain. But then having met Nikki, and I realised when you do have a creative brain, it can go either way.
Yep.
You can sit there in your own thoughts, thinking about great stuff, thinking about things that you want to do and whatever. And you also can creatively just bury yourself, where you go, we could do that if you weren't such a loser.
I know what you mean.
And I've noticed the biggest hurdle I've ever had in my life is myself, where you go, you really think you're going to be able to pull that off? And you're like, no, you're probably right. Let's say in this safe space.
Yeah.
And having met Nikki, she's a very practical person. She's also done exploration in these areas of, okay, the mind-body connection, because it's the first time you're introduced to these ideas, it shakes you up so much where they say, yeah, you've got a brain, but it's not your mind.
Yep.
And people go, well, that sounds insane. And you're like, yeah, I get it. Because I said that the first time. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because it's your id, your identity. That's all your brain. But you're like, no. And it's been framed so many different ways. The monkey brain, the emotive part of your brain.
Yep.
What do they say? Blowing the lid off. That whole thing of your brain, because your frontal cortex, I think, is that the emotive
I've forgotten
part?
all my scientific terms, but we'll go with it. You're the scientist today.
Sure. When this gets released, people are like, he was so far off. That's ridiculous.
We don't have a brain.
Yeah. Maybe there's flat brainers too. No, they're flat.
Fuck, that's a good bit. Yeah.
But and then finding out that you've got all this emotive part of your brain that does work. I mean, it's not worth dismissing, but to have the objectivity to go, oh, that's you speaking, not actually what's happening here. And my partner, and I live in Brunswick, which is the north part of Melbourne, which for anyone listening overseas feels like Portland, feels like parts of San Francisco. Would we be right about that?
Yeah. San Francisco, yeah.
Like you don't batter an eyelid when someone offers you acai berries anymore. Yeah, fair enough. What cafe wouldn't have that?
Would you like to do some mushrooms?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I should microdose. You're right. It's a Tuesday. That makes complete sense. And so living in that area, it's I love it. I love it dearly. But it's almost a cliche now that people do 10-day silent retreats. And
you did do it. And go on. I want to talk about that because that scares me. But
well, it didn't scare me as much. I just thought it was a bit weird because I said I want to get into meditation, and Nikki said you should do a 10-day Vipassana silent retreat. And I said that sounds insane. And when she was in her early 20s, she went to India just ad hoc, wanted to see what it was all about, and then by mistake did a 10-day Vipassana.
It's like in Americans. I read that if there's a line in America, people just go in the line and not know what it is. So she's just like, oh yeah, and I just did a 10-day silent meditation. It's the most random and like challenging thing that you can do.
I agree. Yeah. But if you know my partner, she's hilarious because she doesn't have a lot of inner angst really. She's just one of these like, oh yeah, I'll give it a shot, I guess. When I'm like,
nice.
Wow. That is the opposite of how my brain works.
Yep.
And she did this 10-day Vipassana and she said it really helped. But to me, it was the equivalent of saying, I want to go for a run. Well, just do a marathon and then see how you feel about it.
Yep.
I mean, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yep.
And then she kept saying, what you should do it. You should try it out. And I'm a person who circles around something a lot before I do it.
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, no, I do. I think, maybe, and then months, if not years later, I go, okay, let's do this. And people go, wow, it's amazing you did that. And you're like, yeah, but I've done it now inside my head for the last 2 years.
That's all that matters. It's like Kramer. I know you like Seinfeld. Jerry and Kramer have a bet whether Kramer can make something, and then Kramer doesn't make it. And he's like, yeah, the bet's off. And Jerry's like, no, I knew you could make it. The whole point was that you weren't going to do it. He goes, but I don't want to do it. And then they go back and forth. I've butchered the story. They go back and forth. And Kramer's like, well, I don't want to do this. Everyone can do it. It's about actually wanting to do it. And that actually triggered something for me. The story that we have in our head, we can do it. But actually being practical and doing it, that's the hardest jump and step.
I think we live in a world where it's so easy to criticize and go, screw you for trying. And you're like, well, they tried.
Exactly. We'll pigeonhole that. I've got a whole thing on that. But yeah, you're saying about the 10-day silent meditation, that scares me.
Why does it scare?
10 days of absolute silence. I feel like it would break me, but at the same time, there's a voice of me that would be like, this would be really good for you to break or shatter like parts of your ego that that probably didn't serve you. But 10 days, it feels like jail. I try like 3 days, but I'm not someone that has anxiety. Just talking about doing 10 days, like my heart's racing.
I mean, I take what you want from this. I did one of those personality tests where I found out I was dead in the middle for introvert, extrovert.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
I'm like 51 one way, 49 the other. And
you're a freak.
Yeah. Who is he? Maybe I'm Blade. All of their strengths, none of their weaknesses. Or maybe all of their weaknesses, none of their strengths. But it resonates with me because I'm like that. I like socializing with people, but I hit a limit. And I've noticed this since having kids. And I think Nikki's had to talk to my mum who said, even as a kid, I just hit a point. And even if I had friends over to play, I'd say, I need to go to my bedroom. And she said I would go in there for half an hour, and then come out and go, okay, I'm good again.
Yep.
Because I just need time to myself. And I think that's why I like stand-up, because it's both introverted and extroverted. You have to sit in your own head and think about ideas, and then you have to go explain them to a whole room full of people.
That's a good way of looking at it.
And you're like, oh, it's both of those things. But then I had no problem being on my own for 10 days, nor silent for 10 days. I had a problem sitting still for an hour at a time.
The pain and the back and the mind. And
I mean, you play basketball, like my back and all of my groin and everything is really tight. Like everyone could sit there cross-legged. I couldn't. I had to sit with my knees up, and it was quite painful.
did it dissipate along the...
No, it was actually a good example of sitting with pain and saying, it is just pain. It's not doing anything to you physically. It's just hurting you at this point in time. And
I like that.
I mean, it seems a bit Fight Club, doesn't it? It's like you're that far from holding a flame under your arm, going, keep going.
You didn't have any of that. It would bring up so much silence. You can't run away. You can't escape from anything. It's just you. And you can probably speak to one of the counselors or something. I don't know what the rules are. That 10 days would bring up a lot. And that could be overwhelming for some. Or were you able to just push through and go, I'm here to whatever your goal was?
Yeah, I didn't find anything came up where, I found something happened to me when I was 4 and then I went, oh, no.
That explains everything.
Yeah.
I'm cured.
Yeah, there was none of that for me, luckily. I didn't have anxiety in that area. I quite liked the downtime, if I've got to be honest. I was working in breakfast radio at the time, and I did enjoy the silence. I loved it so much.
Nice.
And the one thing that was pushing me, we were staying, I went to Sri Lanka to do it. More because you can do it. It's all over the globe, really.
I thought you did in India. I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah, well,
because everyone probably does.
Nikki did say Sri Lanka is like India light. Like it's not as in the living standards and thing aren't as hectic.
I've been to India.
Yeah. It's hectic from the sounds of things.
Oh, I was only there for a few days. That's a story for another time. But I just could not believe I was like, this is not the world. Like I've been to the poorest places in Africa. My parents were South African, and I went to Soweto. That is the poorest place in the world. And then I went to India. Like this is a zoo. Where I was, it was like, this is crazy. This is, you see shit on the movie and TV shows until you get there, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into.
I could imagine. It sounds manic.
Yeah.
Nikki did say to me after living there for 9-10 months, she said, you have to accept it because it'll do your head in unless you just accept the sheer anarchy of the entire country.
That's very wise.
And shitting your pants constantly. But we went to a place, Candy, in the middle of Sri Lanka, and it's fully, because I said to her, if we're going to do this, I want to be like Batman. I want to be up in a mountain. I want to train. I want to have it all looking cool.
I love that reference. Yeah.
And so we were up there, and it was a very beautiful area, but we were staying in these pretty shabby, well, I don't know how you could, I mean, there were places to sleep, but it was, pretty shoddy walls. They didn't go all the way up to the ceiling, like a hut, basically. Yeah. So they had walls between each person.
Was it
sleeping.
Cold?
No, it was okay in that respect. Oh, it did get cold. No, in the mornings and things was a bit cold. But then the guy next to me was snoring out of control. And you didn't meet anyone because when you turn up, you were silent and then let's go for it.
So your first impression of this guy is that you want to kill him?
Mate, like middle of the night. And they get you up at 4:30 in the morning to do the first meditation. And I'll concede a couple of mornings, I should say. I slept in because I said, I need sleep. This guy's been keeping me up for the last hour. And I had no break from it either. You couldn't,
true, yeah.
And that's when I conflicted because I wanted rest. I want to be ready for the next day. I wanted to yell at him. I wanted to be like, mate. I actually got up because my father used to snore. My mum said, oh, you always just roll them over to their side.
Oh, I would just drag him out the room, but each way works.
Yeah, that's true. Take them out. But then I got my sheets and things and was just over... Because our walls didn't, as I said, go to the roof. So you could just get over the top of it. And you'd flick him. And I'd flick him to make sure that he'd roll over and stop snoring. And then I started laughing, thinking, this is insane. This is ridiculous. But
can you imagine if he woke up during that and he just sees that?
Yeah, I know. I'm not real. Yeah. This is all happening inside your head.
Exactly. You're in the Matrix.
But what I found interesting is after the 10 days, you'd built narratives of people. Like there's a couple of dudes that I went, I don't like this dude. Don't like the look of him. I don't like what's happening. And then when they started talking, you're like, oh, this is one of the nicest men I've ever met. How funny is that? You just build a narrative of someone that you have no idea it.
Yeah, that's what. But we also do that in the world. We don't actually, just from like looking at them and observing them, we already have this story, and the story that we tell ourselves is always wrong. In my experience, when I've thought something, and if you trust your gut, and if you want to lean into that area,
sure,
that you're right there. But I know if I'm at a party and someone's got their arms crossed, like, oh, that person's a bitch, or that person's speaking loudly there, blah blah blah. But then when you actually speak to them, all of those stories generally get thrown out, and we just kind of make stories up. I found it so interesting. And we also do it with our mind as well. We make up stories that aren't real. And then when you actually like talk it out, you're like, oh, I'm an idiot. That's not true. That's not real. And I'm sure you probably learned about all of this stuff along your journey and being with your partner as well.
Yeah, and trying to imbue yourself with empathy, because so many people who are jackasses, usually you find out, oh, that's why. You find out, oh, you've maybe had a rough trot, whatever led to this. I mean, it's tough when people are spilling actual hate that you see. I think I would struggle if I saw like a white supremacist who was just actually spitting out hate, and you're like, okay, what was your childhood like? And he's just going, okay, this has gone far too extreme. But invariably, that hate came from somewhere.
Hi, it's me, Michael here. While you're here, the best way to grow and develop a podcast is through word of mouth. If you like this episode, please tell your mates or share it around. Lastly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other awesome episodes. Otherwise, let's get back into it. You watched Seinfeld, so I had Peterman on the podcast recently.
Did ya?
Yeah, and
Peterman.
He's actually somewhat similar in a sense to that character. Like, he obviously put it on, but he's like a philosopher. He actually is like a motivational speaker, and he's got the...
I couldn't take him seriously.
Yeah, I know. But when you actually speak to him, like, holy shit. When he speaks, you listen. It's just,
right.
It was very empowering. And he's got like the Peterman Principles to an Extraordinary Life or something like that. He's written books about it. And But basically, one thing is I think he's brilliant, and he sometimes like cops a little bit. Like on Twitter, if you write something about your belief, you're going to be destroyed. And what he does, and he says it's getting harder, but he's able to see them as a kid. And he goes, there was trauma or whatever it was, and that's led him into this way, and this is why they're attacking him. He said it's harder in this day and age, but he can go back and say, we're all broken, and that's beautiful, but I can still see the love. I can still see the child in you, and that's what stops him from getting really angry. And I thought that was beautiful, that he goes back to, you are broken. I don't like the term broken, but we're all not perfect.
Yeah.
And he just sees the beauty in that, and that's how he switches his mind, so he doesn't lose his shit if someone's like preaching hate or all of this ridiculous stuff that seems to be going on.
Yeah, and I think so many things, especially in the Western world, is focused towards the individual. Like I realized I was raised on just consuming things with the individual, for individual accolades, individual opinion.
Yep.
And social media, it's a synthesized way of socializing. It's not real. And it very much focuses on the individual. Even if you've got something good to say, you're getting likes, and everyone goes, nailed it.
Yep.
And you're like, I did nail it, when it might have heard it from someone else. Might have.
Yeah.
And it's all this pats on the back that means the individual ego just gets boosted, and you can sit around for good or bad and feel like you've been personally hurt and I've been tarnished and all these things. And I don't think that helps.
We're on exactly the same page, and what I've had to do, because I've said this all before and you said it much better than me, is that it can be very divisive, and that really depends on the individual. I have pretty much gone, not cold turkey, but I barely look at the news now, because the news, wherever you are, it is so fear-mongering, and most of it's rubbish anyway. Social media, like I don't feel good if I'm on social media. I obviously need to do it for like my creative stuff, and I normally just post my stuff, have a quick look, and that's it. And I found that since I've done that, I am so optimistic. I thought it was the end of the world. It's absolutely not. I'm sorry for the doomsday people out there. And my life has completely changed just from not consuming.
Take that, Mayans. We're going to keep going.
You guys are wrong. And I have...
Wait, have you got a big mind demo? Because if you do, we'll try to win it back.
My life has changed just from barely consuming news and social media. Yes, you still need to like look and do your stuff, but especially in this day and age when we're locked up, it doesn't help. It doesn't get you anywhere. You need to like somewhat keep up to date with what's going on. But I just found it not helpful, and I've always been a happy guy, but I found it a game changer because we can compare, we can see things. It does stuff to us on a subconscious level we don't really understand. I want to know what your experience has been with all of this, because I heard you on another podcast actually say that you did have to consume less media because it was pretty in your face.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in media. You know, I've had moments sitting there and I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is through the merit of people have to know. You know, that media has a lot of, freedom of speech and people have to know. And you're like, yes, but how are you presenting that?
Yep.
And, you know, they've got a quota to fill. I've been in the room where people are a bit down going, oh, slow news day. You're like, isn't that good? Does that mean we didn't fuck up today?
Yeah.
Isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Isn't that fine?
Yeah.
But then I'm with you. I try to lay off social media, but especially when I'm touring and performing, I'm on it a lot. And I was observing myself over the last few weeks because I had a live show on that I'm on it a lot because of the endorphin rush of someone sending me a message going, really liked your show. I'm like, oh, did you? Oh, great. Yeah.
What exactly?
Yeah,
Tell me.
Yeah, it was probably all heaps good, wasn't it? Would you say the best comedian you've seen? And then as I finished up on Sunday, so we're recording this on a Wednesday, so it's only been a few days, but I'm noticing it's like I have to wean off a drug. I was still on it.
Yeah.
Nikki can kind of give me a look and I'm like, yeah, I know. And we're having dinner with the kids and I'm like, yeah, but
like, Daddy, I love you. Shh, Daddy's on phone time.
Yeah, but someone I don't know loves me and
I don't care about you guys. You guys are just my family.
Yeah, you're always here, guys. I'm expecting that you love me.
Yeah.
And I was the same. I'm like, wean off it, mate. Like there's no reason for you to be on this right now. Invariably, I look at it like the win-loss. Like there's more, it's like a pokies machine. You lose heaps more, I think, than when you win.
Yeah.
I think you get things and it's an advertising tool and it's a marketing tool and I understand all that.
And it helps me, but it's that balance. It's finding the right balance, which is never possible for me.
Yeah, because it's also not, if you're addicted to drugs, people can see it. They're like, right, well, you're spending all of your money trying to jack that drug into your arm. This hasn't been working out for everyone.
You have no veins left.
Yeah, but it's almost innocuous enough, social media, that it's a problem because it's like, you know, you're just getting these little hits, but it's 1,000 of those a day. It's constantly all happening to you. It's making, and it's a comparison machine, especially with what I do. You're looking at everyone else when they go, oh, I've sold out this show. I've done this. I'm so happy that I've got this opportunity. And then your brain's like, why didn't I get that opportunity? Why don't they like me? Why didn't I do that? Well, how come I haven't got this thing? And you're like, no. Most of those guys are mates of mine. That was the good thing that happened. And then I'll catch up with them. They're like, yeah, but the next night I had a shit one. You're like, of course you don't post about that.
Yeah.
I mean, my theory is, you know how you have to pay taxes every year for money?
Yeah.
There should be social media tax. And the more followers that you have, the more tax you have to pay.
Yeah.
Just to, so, you know, it comes around in June and you go, well, the Kardashians now have to put up 25 shit posts. I'm really looking forward to this.
I like that. And it's just like the realness because you only post the good shit.
Absolutely. Could you imagine seeing the 4 chins of Kim Kardashian, seeing one of her leaky fake boobs and going, oh, I feel better about myself.
And they're like thousands and thousands of dollars she's put into herself. And it's crazy. I've got a friend and I won't say the person's name because...
No, do it. I've got good lawyers. Do it.
It's Dave Thornton. And he destroys social media. He's getting hundreds of thousands per absolute crazy. And you could tell, and he's brought this up, I just don't know if it's public, so I won't say the name. And when you're like a guy like me, for example, brilliant, when you're like new to the industry and you don't really, it's a game, and then not me, I haven't had this experience, and you're getting hundreds and thousands of people like, comment, and say how brilliant your work is. It is a drug. Like, no, that's like a weird sense of power. It's crazy. You're getting all of these messages, people saying they love your work. It's insane. And obviously you would attach a side of yourself to that because you've never had this experience before. And you can tell now that he's been doing it for a while, he's starting to realize like, fuck, where am I getting my esteem from? And it's for him, it's like being like somewhat of a dangerous game. Like, oh, I'm getting my esteem from random strangers. I really love and respect that they like my work, but this isn't healthy that this is where I'm getting all of my joy and love from. And it's forced him to look at where else can I get my esteem, his relationship with his phone, and he's said the exact same words as you. It is an addiction. And it's also real and not real, and it's very necessary, particularly for our lines of work. And I found it like brilliant that he's been able to like figure out, okay, this is great, but I need to get my love and support and happiness elsewhere. And he's branching off and trying new things in his life. And I thought that was pretty cool. He's quite a young guy as well.
Yeah, and it's difficult because I also feel it's a beast that needs to continually be fed. Yeah. And also, we live in a world where I feel like saying that you're doing something almost holds more weight than doing the thing because even people will say, I'm taking a week off social media. I'm letting you all know, which I completely understand. But then everyone goes, good on you. That's really well done. You're like, thank you. You're like, or you could have just done it. And then people will say, I've got anxiety, because of this. And everyone goes, well, great work. That's really good. Like, it's great that you've expressed all that. Well, you could have then just backed away. Like it almost feels like.
You mean like talk is cheap?
It feels like inaction now has to be mentioned. Even with.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I've noticed even people will say there's a social movement and people say, oh, you didn't say anything or you haven't done that. You're like, no, I'm listening. But what do you want me to do? Like type out, hey guys, I'm listening. So yeah, I'm like, it's weird that every action needs to be commented on.
That is a great thought. Yeah, I agree with you.
Everyone's got this, but I've decided to do this. And I'm like, okay, just do it, mate.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell us all.
It's that, what's that culture? To me, it's like a fakeness. It's not an authenticity. It's, back in the day, you just see someone like doing the work, and then if you wanted to discuss it, it's fine, but you didn't need to go into like massive detail about the process before you've even done it. And I found that it can actually detract you from actually trying to achieve something when you're so worried about what other people want. And it leads into so many different things as well.
Yeah, I get conflicted sometimes about, because I understand that people of profile can also they can help a movement or something by highlighting it because of their profile. There's a cachet there, and I completely get that. However, it's a very murky exchange, I find. And this is not me singling out any single person. I just find it hard within myself because it's almost like, okay, I understand if you've gotten someone of profile, they come in, they highlight an area that needs help. It becomes something and they can get money and they get resources. That's unbelievable. But then there's this weird cachet of exchange because then everyone goes, oh, they're a very good person. But then you're like, yeah, is this why we do it? Is this we do it so that we can get that pat on the back so that we can prove to the world that we are good people? Like, here in Australia, we have the Smith family, which came about because people with a lot of money didn't want the profile and wanted to just accumulate the cash to help people out. So it's just the Smith family.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you don't know who they are. They're just called the Smith family, like Joe Blogs. And you're like, that's the idea that, hey, I want to help people. I don't want you to sit here and come around to me and say, I saw you help those people. You're a good person. You think, I am a good person. You're exactly right. Getting kudos for doing something well is a strange territory for me.
Ooh, go on.
Well, it's just like that. Like, what have you done it for the pat on the back? Have you done it so everyone can know that you're a good person? Is that why you do it? You and I are basketball fans. I find it really interesting. I know Michael Jordan, since the documentary came out, there was a lot of, Michael, why don't you get behind social injustices? And then it's since found out that he does give money to certain areas. He does do things that certainly he just doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to put it out there. He doesn't want to publicize the fact that he does these things. And people criticize him for not doing X, Y, and Z. But he's like, yeah, but it's not the way that I work.
This just triggered a memory. My brother, in his gap year, he volunteered to Ethiopia. And this is ridiculous. They said, if you want to go to Ethiopia and volunteer, you're not allowed to take photos with the kids. And I burst out laughing. And then I was like, why are they saying that? And they're saying because so many people just want to go there to say that they've volunteered and taken photos with the kids. If you're going to go there, we want you to actually help. And it's not about being seen. You are helping and doing your work. And I was like, that is crazy. And apparently like close to half the kids dropped out because that's very important. And I understand it's this fine line, but it's you've hit the nail on the head about, am I doing this so I can be seen as a good person versus being a good person and just doing the work?
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's a strange thing right now. I've also done gigs for people where people ask me, oh, could you do this fundraiser? We'll pay you this much. No, don't worry about it. I'll do it.
Oh, wow, look at this guy.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting around to. I'm a very good person. But then I've turned up to those gigs sometimes and I was like, oh, this doesn't feel like what I thought it was. Like it's under the guise of I'm helping out this area. Cool. And then you get there and there's a lot of B-list celebrities and there's a lot of photographers around and a cameraman. And I'm like, what's happening here? And they're like, oh, it's for so-and-so awareness. And I'm like, yeah. But this seems like a lot. Like, I understand what you're saying, but no one seems to be trying to save money in all these areas. And there's all these nice canapes coming out and there's all this. And I'm
made $100 and it was $1,000 ahead.
I mean, I also get, for people with deep pockets, they want to be pampered. So I also have been at those gigs where they're like, yeah, this is a big outlay. But those people out there, they will give that much money that will make this much profit. And I'm like, cool, I'll believe you. And I get it. You want to catch a big fish? You got to get a big hook. I get it. But I have been in that murky area of, I don't know who this is for. I think it feels like for the person who's organising it, that's who it's for.
That is a great point. And this takes me to another area. As a comedian, and you've done 1,000 other things, and you've also talked about meditation, what has been kind of your relationship with trusting your gut or your intuition, and however you want to frame it? Is that something that you are aware of? Do you listen to it?
I think I used to be, probably came down to my fear and my shyness a bit. Early days, I would almost not listen to my gut and more listen to, you know, especially as a comedian, if I heard laughs, you go, well, then we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then when being asked to do certain gigs and getting opportunities, I'd always be like, well, there must be some merit to that if other people can see it. So I think I was very much placing it in other people's hands of going, well, if you can see it, I must be doing all right.
Is there also like a people-pleasing aspect to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I think we sometimes with that, they say, oh, you're a people pleaser. You're like, isn't everyone? We're pack animals. What kind of sociopath doesn't care what people think
There are a
about?
few, and you're like, holy fuck, you don't care. Normally I'm like, oh, that guy's great, he doesn't care. But then there's a holy fuck, this guy does not care, and he's an absolute psychopath.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you see that in the corporate world, some people, and you're like, wow, this guy's a monster and will do whatever it takes to get to the top. But that's a rare breed.
I think, when it's truly that, you're right, it's a rare breed. However, I also think people have learned to be tough and make tough decisions.
Yeah.
I always say, especially in the industry I'm in, you know, the altitude, you get higher, the oxygen gets thinner, and you find out where some people are willing to make sacrifices, do certain things, sometimes things that you're like, don't know if I'd do that. But that, I mean, maybe that's true for other industries. But yeah, I think when I was younger, like I said, I would put it much more in other people's, of their opinion of me and go, oh, well, there must be something in that. And as I've gotten older and maybe started to learn, it's not like I'm all across comedy. There's a shitload I don't know. But then learning your craft a little more and understanding that, oh, okay, that works because of X, and then spotting it in other people and knowing how that understands and that works. That's science, which I think you get to any point, I think, in a craft, it becomes a fun science. It becomes oh, why did that work? Oh, that's really interesting. Oh, that's fun to watch and that's fun to observe. And that area is so much more enjoyable than, I hope this would. Do you like it? Oh, yeah, I guess so. Reckon?
I know what you mean. I'm a screenwriter. So when I'm watching, it's a little bit different. But when you see a great TV show, for example, like, fuck, they did this and that, and it's so exciting. And that's so cool. But also like coming from, I've given this example 100 times because I don't have a better example. With screenwriting, I'm new to the game. It's not like stand-up where you get the direct response straight away. Someone reads a script, and at the very start, and obviously because it's a new skill, it was shit. My screenwriting was terrible. And then I showed it to various different producers. I was dumb enough to show a Netflix producer my first script I've ever written, and that may have destroyed the bridge. I'm not sure yet. And I was taking everyone's feedback. And then when you take on too many people's feedback, you're left with a pile of shit because, oh, this person wants this person wants this person wants this. Then you take out what you're actually trying to write about and the fun, the creativity and the jokes. And I've got all these different people's opinions. Often they're conflicting. And I literally just had words on a piece of paper. And so now I've had to kind of change my mindset of feedback and who I trust and how I trust and writing for myself as opposed to just doing this because it will please someone else in a sense. And that's really, really changed my screenwriting, but also myself. Because I was always a massive people pleaser. If someone liked this about me, I would do that. And that carried on until the last few years. And I found when you kind of listen to yourself more, don't always do it, then it's a game changer. And I feel so much better and I'm just trying to be me. And there's none of that, what am I doing it for? And linking it back to like the charity stuff. I'm doing it for me, and I'm doing it for me also means I can help people.
Yeah, and it's very hard creatively because not even just people who might be giving you advice that you don't need. You also are influenced by so many people. I'm so sensitive to people's influences. Yeah. And as I've gotten older, I hope to dear God that I've been able to work with it. But, you know, I used to watch stand-ups and you'd almost then get on stage and do a photocopy version of what you've just seen because you're saying, because you liked it so much, like, I'll just do that. And I remembered, I'm going to butcher this parable, but I remembered hearing a story. I think it was Alain de Botton, who's one of those, pop psychologist, scientist, whatever you want to call them. A story of an athlete in ancient Greece where his coach was training him and doing all these things, and he was there in his village, and then he was doing exercises to strengthen his legs and doing sits on the side of the wall, and the cafe owner's like, what are you doing? You look like an idiot. And he's like, oh, I'm just doing this. My coach told me I was going to do this, and he's just abusing this guy. And then every day he's seeing, he's like, you look like a moron. What are you doing? X, Y, and Z. Getting lacerated, not just by the cafe owner, but everyone who's coming into the cafe. Goes and does the Olympics, smashes it. But the point is just that if he'd listened to all those people, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. There's points and there's people that you need to trust. And I think creatively, it's always good to have people that you trust, because you're not an island. But then if you listen to everyone, and that's hard in this day and age, because an interesting thing that someone much smarter than me showed me recently, where they said, when we live in the global village, and this was this article actually from 2002, which I thought was so apt. And they were predicting this, where they said, not only we live in a globe, which is fine, and we get all the voices of the globe, but we also get the detriments of living in a village, which is hearsay, which is gossip, which is, as we've noticed now, some great social movements have come out, but also we've seen how those social movements have gone wayward very quickly.
Yep.
Because there's no rule of law. There's just rule of gossip. There's people going, I heard they did something really shit. And when you're working in a creative space, if you're working with people who I don't like you because I don't know you. I don't like you because you're new. I don't like you because you've tried this. I don't like you because you're mentioning a topic that I don't really like. If you listen to all those voices, you are in the bathtub just about to throw the sunbeam in, because you need those ports of call that you can go, I trust you and I trust your sensibilities. And especially comedy, and I dare I say it'd be the same for drama. That's why so many times a comedy, you see a duo or a team and they constantly work together. And you're like, if you broke that connection, A, they're not going to be as strong, and B, they're not going to create more people. Doesn't mean better product. It doesn't mean if you've got a great comedy duo and then you went, well, we got 4 other funny people, we put them together. That's 6 people. That's going to be
even better.
Do the math, guys. That's heaps better. But it's not now.
But also it comes back to trust. And someone always said you can't have too many cooks in the kitchen because you won't be able to balance out what's real. And what you're saying is to obviously have the people that you trust, and then you can steer yourself in the right direction. But also the most important person is you, because if you don't really know what you're trying to do and you don't know what feels right, I know I'm paraphrasing, then how can you really achieve it? And with those comedy duos, what I think you're saying is because they've got that trust. And then if they were going to separate, then they would kind of feel lost. I found that very interesting. I've always been looking for a comedy partner, and I've never found them. Or I have found them, but then I realized that, how do I phrase this? I found people along the way that have helped me for that project, but I'm I can't be with that person the whole way through because we're going in different directions and we might have a different way of thinking. But I've always had to realize that depending on the project, I know what's best and people can still steer me in the right directions, but I need to be very true to myself. Otherwise, I'm not going to get the result. I'm just going to, because I am easily influenced in the sense. But at the same time, if I was to listen to too many people and not to myself, I wouldn't get anything done. It's been a massive life lesson for me to go, trust yourself, still listen to others, but don't take it 100%. They don't necessarily know what you're trying to do and what you want to achieve.
Yeah, and I think it's up to people as well, especially, I say in this day and age, I mean, who knows? I always say to friends, people who lived in the dark ages didn't know it was the dark ages. They were just no, you just don't walk under a ladder, man. That's just the rules. Maybe we're living in the dark ages right now. But I often think with all the wealth of information that we have at our disposal, when you're working in a creative sphere, but you can't have a good, robust, mature conversation about why something should be the way that it is creatively or not, I'm either you don't know, you're lacking the skills to be able to express that in a mature way, or maybe you just need to step back at the moment because, let's just be adults about it. Why are we changing something a certain way? It would always get my goat working in when you're working with a team especially I also understand if it's a commercial sensibilities where people say, I want to change this. And I'd always be well, then just treat me like an adult. Do you want to change it because you're worried that the audience won't like it? Do you want me to change it because you're worried that sponsors won't like it? Just say that to me. Don't try to sell me this weird kind of, I just don't think it's the thing that you can see them going around in circles. You're like, let's just have a mature conversation.
100%.
I get it. It's fine. But if you're going to rant and rave, or you're going to hide away and then make the changes and not want to, not want to confront me or come up to me and say, I think we just need to do this. I'm like, what are we doing here? Because that's breaking the trust between all of us.
You hit the nail on the head. It's trust. I wrote down a few points. It's ego as well. People not, like most of the time we don't know what we're doing, and some people are like trying to sound too smart and we have to do it for this reason. But what I've had to like figure out in the space that I'm in is where are people's biases, and to figure that out as quickly as possible, because then I know where that information's coming from. Yeah. So with that example that you gave, that human isn't communicating clearly, and that's the number one. If I want to have a writer's room with my screenwriting, I'm living in make-believe, but the number one philosophy will be you clearly communicate what you want and what's not working or what is working for you. There'll be hopefully no judgment and no attacking, but we need to communicate clearly, because then if we're in a team environment, it's not going to get done to the best of its ability. And so going back to that bias section, I have to try and figure out, and I obviously don't always know what that is, but I need to figure out where's their bias coming from. Wouldn't it just be nice, as you said in that example, guys, we have corporates, we can't really do this, it's not ideal, but this is the cards that we've been dealt. And that's so much different into making a bit huff and puff and becoming this show. And yeah, it would just be so much nicer. People could just say, this is the reality, or my reality.
Yeah. And let's talk about it. And also, and I always think about this with me, it's fun to try and find out what you need and what you require from yourself creatively.
Yep.
If you say, I just need to be left alone right now and I could probably figure this one out, it's not a person that wouldn't go, no, it's not happening, so work it out. If you can express to, look, I usually find this easier on my own. I usually find it, if I think about it now, okay, cool, I've heard what you had to say. Could you give me half an hour, 45 minutes? I'll have a think about it. That's all fine. But then you have to express that as well and go, okay.
Yeah, it works both ways.
It works both ways, yeah. Because also comedy it's a strange, ephemeral thing where you're trying to catch a lightning in a bottle. It's very weird, and you're trying to do that, and that can cause a lot of friction in your own brain. But then again, if you want to work with people and you want something to happen, you're like, well, just have the courtesy at least to try and express that properly.
That's what I hated in the corporate world. I wasn't in it for very long. And when you've got clients, and one of my managers didn't know, so he would just be like, oh, it's because of this, and just say like technical words. And I'm like, you are literally saying nothing. I didn't say this. They wouldn't just tell the client, you know what, I don't have an answer now. I will come back to you and I'll get you the answer, because they'll worry that might destroy the business. It might destroy blah, 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 blah. But the client like ends up figuring that stuff out. And I know that if I'm like I was an accountant, that if someone's like, look, I don't have the answer now, I'm going to get it for you. I'm not going to bullshit you. I'd be like, thank you. And I'm respect, because not everyone has the answers. I remember this is really like bad. One guy goes, we need you to do like a lease schedule. I have no idea how to do a lease schedule. It's complicated. And so he gave me a program which was like Windows 95 equivalent. And it was like one of those like coding. I don't know how to do coding. And I'm like, he gave me information, and I haven't done algebra in a while. But like with algebra, you need, I can't believe I'm bringing up algebra. You need like certain information so you can figure out what like the X equals.
Yeah.
I was missing 2 key pieces of information. So I was just guessing. And I said to this guy, I've been doing this for an hour. I can't get the answer because I don't have enough information. Can we just ask them? He goes, I'll just throw in a few numbers, and if it's wrong, they'll let us know. And I said, but then they're going to be paying either a lot for their whatever the lease was, or they're going to be underpaying it. Then they're going to have to pay it back later. And he goes, yeah, but they'll figure it out and they'll tell us. I'm like, no, we're here. I'm like new, and this is a manager.
Yeah,
so we're doing the wrong thing by the client. He goes, and I realized that his bias was he needed to be seen as the big alpha dog. So he'd rather like fuck up the client than put up his hand and say it's wrong.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's not a way to live. And it's a principle that I try to, as best as possible, to just say like, put my hand up and say, you know what, I don't know. And I think people respect you more for that.
I think so. I mean, you're not supposed to be the font of all knowledge. No one is. And I've also found that within spaces, people hide behind a vernacular because I'm part of the tribe, guys. So now that, I even find it in finance. People will say that, so what kind of collateral have you got? Sorry? Collateral. You're like, who's used collateral in the last 100 years? Oh, you mean money behind me? yeah, have you got money? Have you got, oh, right, money and what, things like investments and stuff. Yeah, collateral. And you're like, why don't we just say that?
Yeah, people trying to act too smart.
Yeah, and then I understand that and sometimes to break through that, I found when I was doing breakfast radio, it was a whole world where I said, I just don't understand your vocabulary. Like I'm coming in here as a novice and going, what? And I remember one of our program directors, because all guys in radio used to be on air for a little bit, so they all talk like this. Who were like, yeah, great show, okay, good stuff. I remember one time he just said, hey, but what I think we really need in the show coming up is something primal. And I was like, primal? And because we would do breakfast radio, the hours are 6 till 9, but then you get in there early, so they're early mornings, and sometimes you're I was quite short, to be honest. Being a stand-up comedian, you're working nights, and then they say, can you wake up at the time you would usually go to bed? You're like, probably not.
Jeez.
And so I'd always, in the meetings afterwards, you'd be a bit cooked, and
Yeah, of course.
I always look back at it and think, oh, it's a bit short to people. And I tried to apologise when I could, but when I get tired, I'm not in a good mood. I don't think anyone is. But then he said, primal, something primal. And I went, I'm sorry, I just don't know what that means. I know what it means, but I don't know what it means for you.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you know, we're talking about things of, you know, people can relate to, people can get to. And you're like, well, everything's people can relate to. I don't understand. And I asked him 3 times. And afterwards, my producer went, oh, that's kind of funny. And I was like, mate, I wasn't trying to wind him up. I was just like, what do you mean? And he goes, oh, relationship stuff. Okay, cool. And you just like, just say that. Don't dress it up. Let's just try and the line between, and, you know, people love acronyms. They love all those things. But I realized it's just because it makes you part of the tribe. It makes you, you know, I know this. Get it, guys? I know it. I'm inside. And you're like, yeah, but we're not communicating well because of all this.
Well, that's the most important thing is clear communication. Just kind of like on that, one of my friends, he's younger than me. He's at the top of like the business world for like his age bracket. He's climbing the corporate ladder, and we've all got insecurities. This isn't a go at him, but he will use that lingo. And we're like, I know what you mean, but you can just say it in 3 words. And now he's tried to apply it in his life. And now when you speak to him, it's like, I've got 5, like tell me you're speaking to like a CEO when you're WhatsApping on a Saturday. And I've like said to him, like, look, I understand if this is the game that you're in and you want to play that, but we're mates, just speak to me is like, what's the point? And then he was like, yeah, like he got it. And it just, I think it always comes down to egos, but that's.
Yeah. And we want to know that I've been guilty of it.
Yeah, I do it. I'm not perfect. I want to put my hand up. I do this. That's why I recognize it.
All the time.
Yeah.
You know, when you're, you're like, I get it. So get it, I'm on the inside. Yeah. So I get it. I get all this stuff.
Yeah, and it's nice, but I know clear communication is key. Before we wrap up, I want to go back to your lovely partner and talk about the emotional side because she has obviously helped you a long way. Were you aware of this emotional side of life? I know there's so many ways of saying this, but were you more intact with your emotions, or was she someone that made you a bit more aware and steered you in a certain direction? Because you're obviously very self-aware. So I want to know if that's something that you've always had, or she kind of helped you unlock it a little bit.
Mate, I think I'm a sociopath. This is all a front. I've got a dead body in the boot, which reminds me, actually, it's a hot day. It's going to start to smell. Yeah. No, she pointed out a lot of these things. I think when you're a creative, you don't want to. It's almost like you don't want to unpack it because you're like, but I might
lose it.
I might lose it.
Yeah,
it might all go. But then, as I realised, especially for her, for my daughters, for my friends, my family, it's like, no, you can totally pick it apart. There's some parts that are great about it. There's other parts that aren't. There is, she's brought in a lot of science too. The idea of neuroplasticity actually gave me a lot of confidence because I think when you grow up, your parents by nature just go, you're like this. You've always been like this. You've done that. You've done this. And it creates your identity and you go, okay, well, I'm just like that. But then you think, yeah, but some bits aren't serving me. And so knowing that neuroplasticity, that your brain will change, it does change. Neuropathways will change. It's like, science has proved these things. Now, I'm not one of these ones. I don't want to build my personality up from zero. Some people are just like, I can be anything. You're like, yeah, yes and no. I figure out it's like, I'm 6'2". If I wanted to be a jockey, I reckon I could. It might be an uphill battle, but I reckon I could. I'd have to lose a lot of weight. So I think there's parts of me that, yes, they're built that way. But then there's things that aren't necessarily I have to live with, that I have to think, that's what I do. I will blow up. I'll be emotional if things getting a bit too hard. And, I think, well, no, it doesn't serve me. If I can take a breath, if I can laugh at it, if I can have moments. I mean, none of us perfect. As I said at the start of the podcast, 4 months of lockdown. I was telling my mate only recently, I remember one of my daughters are 4 and 2. My 2-year-old, one night I cooked them soup and she just picked up the bowl and just slammed it on the ground and looked at me. Like, she didn't say anything, but she might as well saying, what the fuck are you going to do about it? And after 4 months of lockdown, Nikki said, do you need to go for a walk? I'm like, I absolutely need to go for a walk. And I went and grabbed a beer and walked around the streets on my own. And then my neighbour actually saw me and goes, you right, mate? And then I just started crying. And then it's like, what's happened? The soup was spilled. But that was a complete emotional reaction from that. But I liked it that Nikki went, you've got to go.
But what you're also talking about, there's an emotional side, but also a belief system side, which is amazing. And a lot of people, we're talking about identity and all of this stuff. A lot of people can say, I am this person, therefore I'm this person. But you recognize that you don't always have to be these different people. And I think I don't do this. I think that's the key to success. The people that I admire, they don't necessarily say, I am this person, therefore I have to be like that. You're able to kind of explore different, it's still you, but you're able to still grow and expand. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think also I've been very fortunate in the industry that I work at. I can see that there's profile and fame is not always a good thing, because I've seen a lot of people who have those tantrums, who do those things, and everyone goes, well, that's just how they are. And I'm like, you're treating them like a child. Like they can't do any better, but they can. And you're letting them be that way. And I always felt really bad about that, seeing people, like, I hope to dear God I've never done it. But, and I think out of respect, it's almost like, find these things out, these things that you can go, okay, well, that's not helping me. Because it's certainly not helping anyone around you, but it's not helping me if I lose my shit, scream, rant, feel that I need to be placated because I feel it's been unjust and the world has thrown me all these things. Like, as you get older, shouldn't you get better at that? Shouldn't you?
Well, credit to you. You're at the top of the game in the Australian market, and you could easily be like that. So it's we've talked about like the power of social media. You're out there, you're a profile. It could be quite tempting to become that and go, well, I can be one of those people. I can just do whatever I want, but you don't. And I find that really fascinating that you respect yourself and others. Like, you're not power hungry, like diva piece of shit.
I mean, I did have a certain rider when I came into this room, and that was 18 different board games that are up on the shelf.
We're playing Twister afterwards.
I mean, I think I find it always quite funny where people will meet someone of profile and they go, oh, they were really nice. And I say, what did you expect from them?
That should be the base. I agree.
Like they're going to walk up to you, punch you in the face and go, are you part of the great unwashed? Never come up to me again. Like, I think... shouldn't we all at least be amicable to each other? Isn't that the base standard for interactions, human interactions?
I agree. I don't know why we view, let's say, celebrities as better than us. We're all equal. I've got some very high-profile people on the podcast, and just random people like, you got this and this person. They're amazing. But the way that they're talking about them is, yes, they've done amazing work, and that's great. But they view that person as a better person because they've achieved something in their line of work. And that really irritates me. Because that person is doing great work, but they are still in the equal playing field in terms of a human. They're not better than you is what I'm trying to say. And I hate exactly what you're saying. I hate how people can kind of get a free pass because we view them in a higher light. I think that's very unhealthy. We should all be seen as equals. And it shouldn't be, oh, that person's really nice. It should be, that person's a dick. That shouldn't be the base. Niceness should be our baseline.
Yeah, and I've witnessed some people where I think we joked about it earlier, but I have witnessed people who almost respect more the people who they don't know. So fans, a fan will come up to them, they'll give them all their attention and be like, oh, this is amazing. They give them more respect than they would, a producer working for them or someone close to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's unhealthy. That's so unhealthy to think you work with these people. Yes, you can be the jewel in the crown, and I guess it all rotates around, this performance thing, but let's not get out of it. We're all parts in a machine. Let's respect each other that we're working with, and, then to have the discipline of when a stranger comes up and goes, oh, I love what you do, to be like, I better be on my best behavior. Okay, so you've had the discipline to do that to a stranger,
not someone in your work,
but not someone you're working with.
So my question is, why aren't you a piece of shit?
I am, like I told you before. That dead body thing, that was actually real. And so you're an accomplice now.
Oh, great. But
I've also, sorry to cut you off, but...
No, we have, what's the rule?
Sorries.
Yeah, get out.
Okay, well, fuck you for even trying to talk. This was my turn.
Yeah, go on.
I remember Andy Lee of Hamish and Andy. He's a really great guy, a really interesting guy I found to talk to about all this because he and Hamish, like, they're both super famous, out of control famous. Like,
they're the biggest names in Australia, basically.
they're the biggest comedy duo that we've seen in 10 years, at least.
Or who's before them?
Well, I mean, for me personally, Mick Malloy and Tony Martin would be two guys. But then they were the biggest thing. And Andy totally gets it where he said, I'll give people all of, like, you know, if a person comes up and says, I really like what you do, he goes, I give them all of my attention. I mean, only so much attention because I can't spend all day with them. But, you know, he will give them that minute or two where he said they want to interact. And it's not this ego-driven thing. He's like, it's been very nice that they've come up to me. And I've seen him do it, and he's very good at it. And then, you know, it's fair enough because it then encroaches on his time. But he's been respectful enough for those people who've been nice enough to come up to him, gives them all their attention, but then it's like, you know, obviously I've got other stuff to do. I can't be here all day.
And then he's a real piece of shit with his teammates and colleagues.
No, he is.
I know.
I mean, he's
I've only heard great things.
And he's an incredibly objective man about all of this stuff, even about the show and things. I found him a really interesting guy to talk to about it all, where he doesn't dismiss the work that they've done, but doesn't dismiss also the situation that they found themselves in and that it's a combination thereof, which I think is a very balanced view. Because I think anyone who's famous, if they think it's all them, they're full of shit. Because 100 years ago, a man telling jokes would not be in my position. He is an insane man in a park trying to make, like, cleaning out chimneys just so he can get up and be like, I got some jokey jokes. Like, your society and your circumstance has so much to do with it as well as yourself.
Yeah, I really like that. Last thing I wanted to wrap up before we do the rapid fire segment.
Oh, quick money.
Just from the meditation side, and you're a fit guy, if you don't mind me commenting. You obviously do a lot of work on yourself, and I can tell by the way that you view life.
Been objectified, okay.
Yep. There's always like a balance of what I can and can't say. But anyway, are there any like daily things or weekly things?
This water you gave me making me woozy. What's going on, Mike?
There's the fizz coming up.
What was your body weight again?
Is there any like things that you do for your overall health and well-being? I know that you've got your partner and you can talk about stuff.
Yeah.
You play basketball. You've meditated in the past. I don't know if you're still doing that. Is there anything that you feel that you need to do to keep you balanced?
Mate, I feel like, again, we're fans of basketball and footy. And, you know, you hear those stories of guys getting older where they go, I have to do all of this so that I can play my sport.
Yep.
And it's cliche, but once turning 40, I was like, oh, I have to do it all now. Great. That's cool.
Yeah.
And so I try to exercise probably 4 times a week would be my maximum that I can promise myself, because otherwise with kids and things, this is insane. Meditation, I now do about 7 minutes once, maybe twice a day. But I only do 7 because, again, it's untenable. If I'm sitting there going, I need to do 40 minutes at the start of my morning, when you've got 2 preschoolers, it's not happening. So then I stop. Then I don't have to promise myself this, that, and the other. I try to eat pretty healthy. So, mate, even after lockdown, a lot of us got off the booze. I'm not drinking
I gained
half
so much fucking weight, and now I'm trying to lose it, and it's actually embarrassing. And I felt myself like sleep, like holy shit, I need to get back into it.
Mate, even doing live performances, I'm starting to do all the things I hear like sports people do. Like I'm completely hydrating. I'm experimenting with what foods are good. I have bananas. I have
lemon in my water.
You've had lemon in your water. I just read Born to Run, which is about ultra marathons. I've started putting just cold water, chia and lime together so that I can get the protein and hydration.
Cold showers?
I finish off my shower as a cold shower.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
I do. So I'm doing all of the things, mate, just to simply do my job. Yeah. But then I decided to have kids at an older age, I should say, which... good on me. But then, idiot. What an idiot. But then, so I'm trying to stay healthy because, you know, my 4-year-old didn't ask for their dad to be going, I'm a back sore. I can't do anything. I just want to sleep all the time. So, you know, I try then to do all of the stuff.
You're doing a great job. And also from the belief system side is what I was trying to say before is that you're not particularly rigid. When you're very rigid, that can lead to a lot of pain and challenges in our life. But it sounds like you're very fluid, and I also like the thing that you said, you promise yourself that you won't promise yourself to do a certain amount of time, because if you constantly make promises to yourself and you don't do it, then that can also impact you. But you at least say, this is what I'm going to be able to do. And whether you do more or less, you still achieved a certain point. I think that's pretty cool. You keep yourself accountable.
Yeah, it sounds like we've got similar brains. If you try to, high achieving seems a little bit pumping up your own tires. But when you want to achieve things, and that's when your brain caves in on itself. You're like, you didn't do it. You didn't do it, you piece of shit. And it's like, oh, this hasn't served me. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, look, be realistic. Go, well, I didn't do that work yesterday. Let's be honest. How about we try and do this today? But man, I used to finish days and be like, you didn't do it today. There would be an anger inside my head. You fucking didn't do it today.
We're the same people.
And so then you just go, all right, but that's not serving. The day's passed. All right, what are we going to do?
So do you catch that much quicker now?
I like to think I do. But again, if I'm tired and things like that, nah.
We're all human. Will Anderson gave a great example when these negative thoughts come in. He was embarrassed by this, and I thought it was the coolest thing that stuck with me. When he gets like these negative voices, whatever they are, he sees himself as Neo with the bullets, and he just pushes them away and guides them away. And that's
cool.
Yeah, how cool is that? I always thought that's a game changer. I've been doing that a little bit now. If I notice a negative thought, I'm like, nah, not real, not serving me, not helping. I'm like, thanks, Will.
That's couched so much better than I could have done it. Yeah. I just have that, mate, what are you doing, you idiot? And then I flick on a streaming service and watch something for a couple of hours.
You do it in your own way.
When he's a sweet superhero in a long leather jacket. That's cool.
I like him. So what we're going to do to wrap up the podcast is we're going to do a rapid fire segment. So the first thing that springs to mind, although you can take your time, and these don't always end up being rapid fire. In fact, they never do. But we'll just call it the rapid fire segment.
Sure. I like it that you've stuck with it though. That's good.
I told you, rigidity is the... Okay, we'll start with this one. I know you have a lovely partner, but if you're on Tinder, what would your bio say about you?
I couldn't be serious with it, I don't think. I mean, I like to tell you I'd be flippant, but then I know if I was single, I'd probably be desperate. It would be just like I do for my Instagram profile. Where I think this week I'm Colonel Nathan Jessup. I called myself from A Few Good Men.
Oh,
that's Jack Nicholson from A Few Good Men.
Nice.
I think I would change it to obscure movie references to hope that my partner understood it.
So, do you want to lock that in for social media? We upload a funny photo of you with your Tinder, whatever you just said.
Yeah,
Do you want to lock that in?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, great. Right. Biggest pet peeve.
Biggest pet peeve. I will concede when people aren't nice to, like when people do little things that aren't, like if you're letting someone in on traffic and they don't give you the finger off the steering wheel, just, hey, thanks, champ. I'm like, I hope you burn in hell.
I do. We are like the same people. You're like the much more accomplished, better basketball player, go for shitter sports teams, but we're very similar. If I let someone in and they don't thank me in, I'm like, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to follow you. I don't. You owe me that thanks. I went half a second out of my way to let you in and you didn't thank me. Gets me every time.
I know. It makes you think if you were Liam Neeson from Taken, it would be an indiscretion of such less value. Yeah. Like, you don't have to steal my daughter. Just cut me off like that and you are gone, you piece of shit.
Yep. Okay, we're on the same page. What brings the best creative content out of you?
I like to say drugs, but no, that's not
microdosing.
Yeah, or macrodosing.
I actually do have mushrooms, but medicinal mushrooms like lion's mane, cordyceps. That actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I can show you the kitchen afterwards.
They're all medicinal, man.
Yeah.
I'd say curiosity sounds wanky, but it's always when I find that there's a glitch in the matrix, that's when I'm like, oh, that's something's in that. That I can't. I mean, there's nothing come of it at the moment, but I only realised the other day, I thought, why are they called spiderwebs and cobwebs? And then I looked them up and found out that a cobweb is an unused spiderweb. It's an old spiderweb. But something that stupid is enough for me to fill a day.
Yep. How do you write down your ideas and jokes? Do you have like a notepad or pen? Do you do it on your phone?
No, I've got a very systemic way of working. I have the notes in the Apple, which I'll write things down. So I'm just showing you now. I've got all these little.
Oh, you're way more organized than me.
Yeah, so then
I have it in the one, which is so stupid.
Stand-up ideas, social media ideas, things like that, and then I sit on my laptop and just extrapolate it. It's very systematic, very systematic.
I need that. If you could have any superhero power, what would it be, and why?
What would it be? The power to make sure when people say asked, I could just flip those letters around and get them to say it normally. It's ASK. How could you not say asked?
Who says that? What area?
Asked. In Australia, there's a lot of angst going around.
I live in a very small bubble, obviously.
When people, I'm just like, how did you do that? Angst. I was just like, I asked you a question. I'm always like, how did you not? It's a very Australian thing. To
What about
screw those
use?
letters up.
I don't like use.
You don't like use?
No.
I've probably said use before. I probably say it ironically, but then I really do say it. That's my bogan heritage. But honestly, if I had it, if I'm being honest about it, who wouldn't want to fly? If I could be honest about a superhero power, surely. Invisibility, I don't think so. I think flying would have to be.
I feel like only like a very creepy male particular would do the invisibility because you just do some fucked up stuff. Like what purpose does invisibility serve unless you're like a combat soldier? I haven't thought it through, but I feel like it's the creepiest of all the superhero powers.
I couldn't agree with you more. Have you seen The Boys on Amazon?
Yes, yeah.
And the translucent dies early, which is fine.
Yeah,
We haven't
spoilers,
watched it, whatever.
Spoilers.
But I'm like, so he should.
Yeah.
What a creep.
Great answer. Do you have a certain philosophy in life that you follow? Even though you come from a Christian background, you sound like you've got a bit of Buddhist beliefs as well.
A couple of things I've picked up.
I didn't mean even though as a go against Christianity. I'm just saying that you look like you've picked up other stuff along with your upbringing.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things, whether this is probably an influence of my partner again, but my voice just broke then. That's
I do it.
Finally, I've hit puberty.
Yeah.
One of them, I think, is a nice thing to remind yourself that life's a garden, not a building. Because quite often you think you're finished and then you go, well, that's all done. And you're like, no, it'll keep growing and keep working. Sometimes you need to prune it. Sometimes you need to rework it. It's going to change whether you like it or not. And as a performer, I think it's good for your ego because performers have a nice way of going, don't you remember that I did this? And then you go, yeah, but time will pass and no one will give a shit what you used to do. So it's a garden. It's not a building. It's not stagnant.
That is a fucking good quote.
It's a good way to live. And also, secondly, I think that there's, this is what came to me in my Vipassana, realizing that there is a freedom in discipline. If you have discipline in your life over certain things, there's actually a freedom to that. I think in the Western world, we just believe if you've got freedom of self, freedom of everything, freedom of thought, freedom of speech, you're going to be happy. But you're not, because doing whatever you damn well want will not lead to happiness. But if you're disciplined enough within what you do, and again, that makes it sound like I'm trying to start some communist fascist country. Where
We can do it like a cult. We can,
yeah, it feels very culty.
Yeah, we can do that.
With the hammer and sickle, we shall find our way to rise through it all. But it feels, I just think there is freedom because if you have the discipline to keep yourself physically healthy, mentally healthy, the discipline to care about other people, be empathetic, do all those things in place, there is a freedom to it because you realize, I'm living the life that I want to live rather than constantly living the regret of, I should do this, I should do that.
Lima actually brought that up as well. I can go on. You gave me a look. I don't know if that's a good or bad look.
No, I'm happy to. I reckon Limo, again, is one of the more interesting characters because he's a good mate of mine.
Okay. So you know a different side of him to me.
No, but I find his principles, I would love to hear them because, we talk a lot of shit, Limo and I, but then I also think he lives a very ostensibly happy life. I look at him, I go, you found a joy in this that I think a lot of stand-ups work their way out of not finding joy in life.
Yeah. But he seems... He's stayed with me. I really enjoyed chatting with him. But he recommended this book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I brought this up a few times on the podcast. Yeah. And I believe he's got some really strong life principles that he definitely follows in his life. And he seems to be quite a overall joyous character. Because he brought it up, I actually bought the book and I'm about to finish it. But the number one regret, it's sort of talking about what you mentioned. The number one regret, so there was a palliative care nurse. She's worked with probably thousands of clients over the years who were all about to die and they were mentally sound. They knew what was going on. And the number one regret was, I wish I lived the life that I wanted to live and not the life others wanted me to live. And he read that and then that seemed to be a bit of a game changer for him. It's a game changer for me. What are you doing it for? And it ties in quite nicely with the principles that you're talking about in the Eastern philosophy because it's also about yourself and other people. And I found that so awesome, and I'm about to finish the book, and I really recommend it. It's got 4 other ones which are amazing, but it just kind of took away the seriousness of life and realized that we can achieve what we want to achieve, and it's not mumbo jumbo. It's just purely conversations. I loved it.
Yeah, and I also think, our ego, especially as a young person, is always fed into that. Oh, I've done this and I've accomplished that, and you're like, it will, but distance and time, it will peter off into the sunset. It always does. And that's a good reminder. of doing those things that you enjoy rather than, and with what we do, it's very much placed on the approval of others. So it's a risky position to be in, but and the balance between the two.
You've tied that in quite nicely. What are you most proud of?
This podcast. This is
first time I've ever got that. It's going to be my ringtone.
Proud of my family, proud of the kids, the work I'm trying to do with them. When I say that, that feels like we're doing some doing some volunteering over in Ethiopia. I just mean
no photos.
Learning how to parent them, and vice versa, what they teach me. I think that's what I'm proudest of at the moment. And then other stupid jokes that I've written.
I love that. I love the balance as well. Any advice you want to give people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps are a bit fearful of doing so?
I mean, if they're talking about what I'm, let's say, stand-up comedy, I think, A, do it. It only exists if you're physically doing it. That's what I do like about stand-up comedy. Theory accounts for squat in comedy. Unless it's a joke doesn't exist unless you've said it to people and it's gotten a laugh. It does not exist. I've seen a couple of guys, met through my time, and they keep, bless them, and they'll go to gigs, they're breaking it apart, they've got great theories, and then I say, how often are you doing gigs? I only did a couple, and then I let it go for a while, but now I think I'm going to do it again. I'm like, do it. Just do it. It doesn't exist unless you do it. It doesn't. And so get up. You'll be nervous as shit. You probably won't remember it. Just remember to take, this is some advice from Steve Nash.
Oh,
the point guard from
yes.
Phoenix Suns. When he said shooting free throws, he found out 3 deep breaths just to calm yourself down. It's as simple as all hell. Young comedians look at me like, that's the advice you're going to give me? I'm like, yes, 3 deep breaths, 3. Just it'll settle your heart, it'll settle your nerves, it'll ground you, and 3 deep breaths. Think about it, concentrate on them, because your nerves will be going crazy at that point in time before you walk out on stage. Just do that, and it'll calm you down.
That's brilliant. And you can do it for everything as well.
Yeah.
If you could go back into a time when you were first starting out, what advice would you give yourself? Would it be that, or would you give yourself more specific advice to you?
Have more sex, like way more. Just do it all. Anything.
No more fedoras?
So,
and a scarf?
Yeah. I don't know if I would have advice for that kid. I'm like, again, just do it. And I did a lot of it. And that's not to say I nailed it. It's just, that's how you learn, just by doing it.
So this is the last question before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you. What is the one question I should have asked you?
Oh.
We normally get like 5 minutes of silence, so it's all good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just because you've nailed everything.
We're going to have to do a part 2 because I've still got so much stuff I wanted to discuss with you, especially your way of thinking I love it.
What things should you have asked me about? I don't know, mate. I think you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, we can go down a wormhole of basketball, what I believe.
We can. I don't know if my audience likes basketball, but we can, if you want to. Was anything specific about you? You wanted to tie in something? Maybe I said something stupid that you wanted to correct, or something that you weren't happy with, or you're happy?
No, I think I've espoused whatever wanky ideas that I think I have. I mean, look, one thing, I guess, I don't know how to catch this as a question. I feel like I'm on Jeopardy. I needed
who and what. I always found that so hard.
So hard.
Yeah, why? But anyway, that's.
I mean, Americans, obviously, you grew up with it. Our simple Australian brains were like,
we can't
what?
process. Yeah,
just work in a straight line, mate. Just give us the answer.
Linear, bro.
Yeah, linear, bro. That should be in our coat of arms. Linear, bro. I often think you got to check yourself on your motivations especially when you're doing something creative like this, because my motivations as a young man have completely changed as I've gotten older, and I've noticed some people where they've held on to those things, and again, it's been to their detriment. I can see them as they're getting older with that same ferocity and nervousness and this dogged almost, I need to do this. And I'm like, I don't think you need to work like that anymore. And that's not to say you won't be any better, but I think there's a fear to go, I can't let go of that, that burning insecurity or that they'll be kicking themselves and grinding themselves down. And I'm like, I think that needs to change.
100%.
And it's good to be motivated, but then you have to check sometimes, is that motivation helping you or is it not? Because, I've seen some people make themselves very unhappy who ostensibly look successful, but then, and you very quickly get down to the idea that, you're not, because you're fueling yourself in the same way.
Like what once worked for you doesn't mean it's going to work for you now. And you talked about the brain and how it changes. Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I remember, I'm not a big fan of soccer, but I remembered Roy.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Roy Keane, I remember he retired when I was backpacking overseas, and there was this big thing. He's left Manchester and all this. And I was reading the book about how he said, I couldn't even enjoy a win. I'd finish the game, and a huge game. And he said it would be 20 minutes afterwards. I'm just like, what's the next one? What's this? And I was like, there is an unhappiness to that is amazing. Like, yes, you need to let go of wins. You can't hold on to them for the rest of your life. Just because you've done something when you were 21 doesn't mean you can be 60 going, still a legend. I don't know if you've noticed what I've done. That's too far. But then also things happen in your life. You deserve to give yourself victories and then be able to move on from it. But he did it in no, you don't deserve this victory. You need to keep the fire burning. You need to keep going. And I was like, what a miserable way to live.
I know. Matthew Lloyd was on the podcast and he said something very similar. He said he had to change the way he saw it because he was just miserable. He hated footy at the end. And I think he ended up seeing a counselor or a psychologist, and it just helped him with the way that he's thinking. And his life has changed for the better because it was also somewhat of a punishment. And what worked before, I was this superstar. These are my words, not his words. And it changed for him, and it changed the way that he saw it. It changed the way he saw leadership. And it's the same thing. What once worked doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work now.
Yeah.
And keeping us checking in and keeping yourself accountable.
Like, I get it. Sometimes you pull it out. Like,
Yeah.
I try to do my exercise first thing in the morning. I wake up, and even the kids might watch half an hour of telly, and I'm out back doing whatever I think is trying to keep me fit. But I'm not going to lie. It's not like I don't wake up and go, come on, you piece of absolute shit. Get out there. But that's
the same as me.
But that's so much of just, and to physically do this thing, I've just got to go, come on. But if I was doing that the whole day and everything that I do, come on, you piece of shit, get moving. Come on, I was like, physically I couldn't handle it because I'm, we're all becoming less young. Yep. We are all getting older.
You've noticed.
Yeah. And then also emotionally, I couldn't hold on to it. I've got so many other things on my plate right now to constantly tell myself I'm a piece of crap. Like, I could imagine living with that person too. Like, how hard would it be if you're the partner of that person who's constantly like, I'm no good.
Yeah.
And you're like, why am I loving you if you're sitting here hating yourself?
Exactly. And just what stuck with me was on the Matthew Lloyd side that he acknowledged and recognized it and then decided to make a positive change. And that's exactly what you're saying. We can talk about that for a very long time. But before we go, how can people keep up to date with you and follow you and see all the awesome stuff that you're doing?
After people have heard all of that waffle and thought,
no, I thought it was really good. Yeah.
I am on the socials at Dave_Thorno for the people who are overseas. It's a sign of respect when you cut your name short. And on the Twitter, Instagram, not on TikTok because I'm old enough now.
Yep.
Be an adult.
We won't be rigid. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know in a couple of years.
Yeah.
But, and then Facebook, I think it's Dave Thornton official page or something creative.
We'll
like
find
that.
it and we'll upload it in the episode notes so people can.
Yeah. And so check all that stuff out. And if I don't reply to you straight away, I'm doing it because I'm being mindful.
Exactly.
It's good for us.
And you're looking after yourself, and that's anyway. I could speak to you for ages.
Because I'm talking to the cops about the body in my car,
and I'm also in jail for some reason. I could speak to you for ages. I love your philosophy and mindset on life. You are a great person to speak to, and we're going to have to do it again sometime because you're an absolute legend.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Also, it feels like we're going to be playing some half-court b-ball sometime soon.
We are. I've also got a ring, but we'll see.
What am I been doing here like an idiot?
Okay, we'll play 21 if you've got time. Okay, Dave said yes, so he's accountable, and we're off.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
I've been really focusing on Dave's advice around breathing, especially when we're stressed. He gives the simple but extremely effective advice to take 3 deep breaths. Whenever you're experiencing the panic or stress reaction, 3 solid breaths can really take you out of it. To me, this is game-changing advice you can apply all the time, regardless of the situation. His partner's brilliant analogy around life being a garden really resonated with me. In a real garden, plants continuously grow. We need to prune them, weed them, cut them back, replant, etc. If we were to compare this to the world, we would recognize that the world is always moving, changing, and expanding. Dave uses this comparison to help us move, grow, and be present. Life will change, and that's okay. We just need to move with it.
If you like this episode, share it around, tell your mates. It really helps grow the podcast and spread the positivity and love.
Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.